Long before kings built empires, the people of ancient Mexico worshipped small dogs as messengers of the gods. They were not symbols of weakness, but of spirit, proof that greatness was never measured in size. This is the story of the Chihuahua, the heart of a tiny warrior. Their tale begins more than 1,000 years ago, beneath the golden sun of Toltec and Aztec civilizations. Among temples carved with serpents and eagles, there lived a small, silent dog called the Techichi, the ancestor of today's Chihuahua. These dogs were sacred. They were believed to guide human souls across the river of death to the afterlife, lighting the path between worlds. When an Aztec noble died, a Techichi was placed beside them, not as a sacrifice of pity, but as a companion of honor. The dog's spirit was said to guard its master in the next world just as fiercely as it had in this one. To the ancients, the Techichi was not an animal. It was a bridge between life and eternity, between man and the divine. Archaeologists have uncovered their remains buried in royal tombs, their likeness sculpted in clay and obsidian, their eyes forever open. These artifacts speak of reverence, of partnership older than history itself. Despite their size, these little guardians carried immense symbolic weight. They represented fire, the spark of life that refuses to die. Their bark was said to ward off evil spirits. Their presence was protection itself. Even the gods, legend says, chose them. In the Aztec pantheon, the god Xolotl, twin of Quetzalcoatl, took the form of a small dog to guide souls through the underworld. Every Chihuahua alive today carries that same myth in its blood, a spark of divine purpose disguised in fur and courage. But sacred or not, their world was not gentle. When the Spanish conquistadors arrived in the 1500s, the temples burned and the empires fell. The Techichi, the soul dog, vanished from cities and shrines, believed lost forever. And yet it wasn't. High in the mountains of Mexico, far from the reach of conquest, villagers kept small, alert dogs that looked strikingly familiar, wide-eyed, short-muzzled, with the same unwavering gaze seen in the carvings of ancient gods. They survived not through strength, but through devotion. Families passed them down like heirlooms, believing the dogs could sense danger and bring luck to the home. For hundreds of years they remained hidden, guarding hearths instead of temples, carrying forward an unbroken line of faith. They were no longer worshipped as gods, but loved as guardians, the divine made domestic. Their journey from sacred symbol to household protector is one of the most extraordinary transformations in all of canine history. No other breed has lived as both deity and pet, revered in death, cherished in life. To the people who kept them, these little dogs were living memories of a fallen world. They reminded them that even in conquest, spirit could not be conquered. And so the Techichi endured, smaller, humbler, yet still carrying the fire of the ancients. Centuries later, travelers would rediscover these tiny descendants and give them a new name, the Chihuahua, after the rugged Mexican region where they were found. But by then, their destiny was already written. They had outlived empires, crossed centuries, and waited patiently for the world to notice them again. For in their silence, in their smallness, they carried something eternal, a heartbeat that defied extinction. The gods may have faded, the temples may have turned to dust, but the little guardian still walked the earth. The Chihuahua had survived, and its story, like its courage, was only just beginning. When the empires of the Aztecs and Toltecs fell, their temples crumbled. But their little guardians refused to vanish. The Techichi, once the messenger of souls, disappeared from the eyes of conquerors, but not from the hearts of the people. In the 16th century, the Spanish conquest swept across Mexico like a storm of steel and fire. Cities were burned, statues shattered, gods were silenced. And yet, in the quiet corners of mountain villages, small dogs with ancient eyes still watched over families by the firelight. They no longer stood beside kings or priests. They stood beside farmers, shepherds, and mothers, the new guardians of a wounded land. Their temples were now simple homes, their altars replaced by kitchen floors. But the bond remained unbroken. To the villagers who sheltered them, these little dogs were more than companions. They were survivors of history, living reminders of a civilization the world tried to erase. The Spanish called them perritos, little dogs, dismissing their significance. But the people knew better. They whispered that the spirit of Xolotl, the god who guided the dead, still walked among them, in fur, in bark, in loyalty. While conquistadors hunted gold, they overlooked something far more enduring. A lineage of courage small enough to fit in a palm, but vast enough to span centuries. For 300 years, these dogs remained hidden, passed down from generation to generation. They adapted to the harsh desert winds of northern Mexico, living on scraps, surviving droughts and hunger. They learned silence, they learned caution, they learned trust only within their circle, a trait still seen in the breed today. Each family treated their dogs as both protector and omen. If the Chihuahua barked at night, it was said a stranger approached. If it rested peacefully, the household was safe. To lose one was to lose luck itself. But survival came at a cost. Without temples or breeders, their size grew smaller. The once robust Techichi became lighter, quicker, sharper. Nature sculpted them into something new, the desert's perfect survivor. And then, in the 19th century, the world finally rediscovered what Mexico had quietly protected. Travelers and traders crossing between the US and Mexico noticed these alert little dogs guarding huts near the region of Chihuahua. Unlike anything seen in Europe, they were tiny but fearless, chasing away animals 10 times their size. Their ears stood high, their eyes glowed with defiance, and their presence demanded respect. The world took notice. Collectors and dog enthusiasts began bringing them north of the border, intrigued by their ancient origins and fiery temperaments. For the first time in centuries, the little guardian stepped back into the light. In the late 1800s, the breed was officially recognized, but by then its destiny had changed forever. It was no longer a secret of the mountains, it was a citizen of the modern world. Yet, even as they entered parlors and show rings, the Chihuahua carried its heritage in silence. Every tilt of its head, every confident step was a whisper from the past, a reminder that what survived empires can survive anything. Their survival story wasn't written in strength or speed, but in spirit. They had outlasted war, famine, and time itself, not because they were the strongest, but because they refused to surrender their purpose. And as history would soon prove, that same spirit, small, fierce, unyielding, would make them not only one of the world's most recognizable breeds, but one of its most beloved. They began as the companions of kings and gods. They endured as protectors of the poor, and now they stood ready to conquer hearts across the world, not by force, but by faith. The Chihuahua had survived the fall of empires. The age of rediscovery was about to begin. By the late 1800s, the deserts of northern Mexico held a secret the world was ready to rediscover. Traders crossing the border into the small state of Chihuahua began to notice them. Tiny dogs darting between adobe houses, bold and bright-eyed, barking as if they were kings of the dust. They were survivors of forgotten gods, yet they carried themselves like royalty reborn. Their size made them easy to overlook. Their spirit made them impossible to ignore. American travelers began buying them from local families, charmed by their intelligence and unusual confidence. Some took them home as curiosities, others as companions, but all felt the same thing, that there was something extraordinary in this little creature that refused to bow to anything. It was the beginning of a new journey, from the heart of Mexico to the heart of the modern world. By 1904, the American Kennel Club officially recognized the Chihuahua as a breed. But what no registry could record was the wave of fascination that followed. For in a time when industrial cities were growing louder, faster, and colder, this tiny dog reminded people of something simple: warmth, loyalty, and life itself. They fit perfectly into the rhythm of a changing world. Urban families, with little space but big hearts, found in them the ideal companion. They didn't need fields or kennels, only love. And in return, they offered devotion fierce enough to fill a kingdom. Soon, Chihuahuas became a symbol of personality, small in body, massive in character. They didn't just enter homes, they entered culture. In the early 20th century, they appeared in vaudeville acts, then movies, their bold eyes and dramatic expressions captivating audiences. They weren't trained to entertain. They were simply being themselves, fearless, funny, and unforgettable. As the decades passed, the Chihuahua traveled from Mexican villages to Hollywood sets, from market stalls to royal palaces. Everywhere they went, they left the same impression. That courage has no size. Even the way they walked, brisk, upright, aware, carried the pride of their ancestors. They weren't submissive lapdogs. They were emperors in exile, reclaiming their throne one heart at a time. During the Great Depression and the post-war years, their popularity soared. Families struggling through hardship found comfort in a pet that asked for little, but gave everything. Their loyalty wasn't measured in gestures, but in presence. A warm body curled beside you when the world felt cold. In the 1950s and 60s, celebrities adopted them, and the Chihuahua became the icon of charm and elegance. Stars like Xavier Cugat, known as the Rumba King, famously carried his Chihuahua Chico on stage, a tiny symbol of Latin passion that captured American hearts. From there, their fame only grew. Advertisements, films, and fashion houses adopted their image as shorthand for individuality, a reminder that greatness could come in the smallest package. But behind the glamour was something deeper, a legacy of survival. Every modern Chihuahua carried within it the same fire that burned in the Techichi of ancient Mexico. That's why, even today, they act as if they've forgotten their size, barking at dogs 10 times larger, defending homes as if they were sacred temples. They remember the role they once played, protectors of souls, companions of kings. And perhaps in some quiet way, the world remembers too. Because when people see a Chihuahua standing tall, tail curled like a banner, something instinctive stirs. Admiration, laughter, awe. They remind us that spirit, not strength, defines greatness. By the turn of the 21st century, the Chihuahua had become one of the world's most beloved breeds, a star of film, art, and pop culture. They appeared in everything from fashion campaigns to animated movies, their image symbolizing courage, sass, and resilience. But fame never changed them. They remained, as they always were, watchful, loyal, impossibly brave. From the deserts of Mexico to the cities of the world, they carried the same fire, the same defiance that once made gods take notice. The Chihuahua was no longer a relic of the past. It was a living legend, the smallest creature to ever conquer the largest empire of all, the human heart. Look into their eyes, wide, dark, and burning with light. Behind that gaze lies the soul of a fighter who has forgotten fear. The Chihuahua may stand only inches tall, but within that frame beats the heart of something eternal, a warrior's heart. Scientists call it genetics, historians call it heritage, but those who live with a Chihuahua know the truth. It's not instinct that drives them, it's identity. They were born to defend, to guard, to love with all the fire of a creature that knows how fragile life can be. And so they live as if every moment matters. You can see it in the way they stand, proud, poised, unyielding. They don't back down, even when the odds are absurd. They challenge dogs 10 times their size, bark at shadows if they sense something wrong, and rush to their owner's defense without hesitation. To them, loyalty isn't an emotion, it's duty. The Chihuahua's courage is the purest kind, not born of muscle or might, but of conviction. They've carried it for centuries, from the tombs of the Aztecs to the doorsteps of modern homes, that same spark that once led souls through the underworld, now glows in the way they guard the living. They don't see themselves as small, because they aren't. In their minds, they're still the protectors of gods. But their bravery isn't reckless. It's intelligent, calculated, and deeply emotional. They study people, memorize patterns, sense moods. They know when something feels wrong before words can explain it. Psychologists studying the breed have found that Chihuahuas form hyper-attuned emotional bonds. They pick up on human stress faster than almost any other dog. They don't just respond to emotion, they absorb it. That's why to their owners they feel less like pets and more like mirrors of the soul. When you're calm, they rest. When you're anxious, they pace. When you're sad, they press their small bodies against you like tiny shields against the world. This empathy is their true power, the gift that allowed them to survive every change of history. But with great loyalty comes great protectiveness. They often choose one favorite person, the one whose heartbeat they trust most. To that person, their devotion is absolute. They'll stand guard through the night, bark at anything unfamiliar, and follow their chosen human from room to room as if their existence depends on it. And in a way, it does. The Chihuahua's world revolves around the ones it loves. That's why abandonment wounds them so deeply. Why trust, once lost, takes time to rebuild. They don't give their loyalty lightly, but once given, it lasts a lifetime. Even their stubbornness, that fierce independence that frustrates so many owners, is not defiance, it's confidence, a refusal to bow to the idea that small means submissive. To train a Chihuahua is not to dominate it, but to earn its respect the same way you would with a friend. Once that bond is built, obedience becomes natural, effortless, heartfelt. Those who dismiss them as yappy or fragile misunderstand what they are witnessing. That bark, that attitude, that fiery spark. It's centuries of survival speaking through fur and fury. It's the voice of the desert dog that refused to die. The whisper of the Techichi still echoing through time. The Chihuahua doesn't bark because it's afraid. It barks because it believes it must protect what it loves. And in that belief lies something sacred. Their hearts may be tiny, but they beat with the rhythm of warriors, lovers, and survivors. They remind us that courage isn't measured in height, but in how much you're willing to defend something you care about. For the Chihuahua, that answer is always the same: everything. They've never asked for thrones, riches, or glory, only to be close to the ones they've chosen. And if danger comes, they'll face it without hesitation, because to them, love and bravery are the same thing. It's no wonder they've been called the smallest protector with the largest heart. For when you hold one in your hands, you're holding the distilled essence of courage itself. Ancient, loyal, unbreakable. The world sees a toy breed, but those who truly know them see something else entirely. A living reminder that greatness has never needed size, only heart. Every legend begins with a spark, and some sparks burn forever. The Chihuahua's story began in temples of stone and shadow, but it ends in something far greater: the warmth of millions of human hearts. It has walked through centuries of chaos, survived conquest and extinction, and still stands today, not as a relic, but as a revelation. From the deserts of Mexico to the skyscrapers of New York, from ancient altars to velvet couches, the Chihuahua has carried the same message through time: that true greatness is not in the body, but in the spirit. They have become icons of loyalty, courage, and personality. Living proof that the smallest voice can echo through eternity. In every home they enter, they bring history with them. Their bark still carries the echoes of 1,000 years. Their loyalty still mirrors the devotion once given to gods. Their courage still burns like the fire they once represented. They are not just companions, they are survivors of civilization itself. In the modern world, they've become cultural symbols, featured in movies, art, music, and fashion. They've shared the screen with celebrities, graced royal households, and ruled over cities from the comfort of their owners' arms. But beyond fame, beyond image, the real legacy of the Chihuahua lies in something deeper, in the quiet moments no one sees. A small dog waiting by the window for its human to return. A soft head resting against a hand during long nights. A heartbeat pressed against a chest, reminding us that we are never truly alone. They remind us that love doesn't need to be loud to be strong, and that the bravest hearts often beat inside the smallest bodies. Generations have passed since the Techichi guided souls through the underworld, but perhaps in a way they still do. For when grief darkens our world, when loneliness feels endless, there is something almost spiritual in the way a Chihuahua looks at us. As if to say, "I know. I will walk with you until you find the light again." That is their gift. Not protection alone, but companionship that reaches into the places words cannot. And while some see fragility, those who truly know them see the opposite. They see endurance, devotion, and a kind of strength that defies reason. Because the Chihuahua is not a product of comfort, it is a product of survival. It has endured more than most creatures could ever imagine, and yet it greets every day with trust, love, and laughter. Their story teaches us something profound, that no creature is too small to change the world and no voice too quiet to be heard. In every bark, there is a memory of gods, in every glance, the courage of warriors, and in every bond, the eternity of love. Today, the Chihuahua stands as one of the most beloved dog breeds on Earth, a global symbol of personality, loyalty, and defiance. From the red carpets of Hollywood to the humble homes of small towns, their presence means the same thing: that joy can be fierce, that love can be fearless, and that no one who has ever loved a Chihuahua will ever underestimate the power of a small heart again. As the world continues to change, faster, louder, more uncertain, the Chihuahua remains constant, a heartbeat of history, a spark of ancient fire, a reminder that courage, in its purest form, is quiet and unwavering. And perhaps that is why, even after 1,000 years, humanity still turns to this tiny creature for comfort. Because the Chihuahua is more than a pet, it is a symbol. Of faith that endures, of love that outlives empires, of spirit that never fades. Long ago, the people of Mexico believed these little dogs carried souls to the afterlife. Maybe, in their own way, they still do. Not through myth or ritual, but through the way they fill our lives with warmth, laughter, and grace. They carry us through dark times. They remind us to be brave. They remind us to love beyond limits. That is their immortality. That is their purpose. That is their legacy. And so, the smallest warrior stands unshaken by time. A creature born of gods, forged by survival and crowned by love. The Chihuahua, heart of fire, soul of devotion, and proof that greatness can fit in the palm of your hand.